Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Another O-level biology paper 2. This is the paper 2-1 for November 22. Please remember, as in the new syllabus, the essay questions have been removed. I mean, one of the students today WhatsApped me, and I was totally shocked that that student did not even know and was taking the exam in the coming months and did not know that the section B and the C have been removed and there are not going to be any more essay questions, and you are practicing for the essay questions. That is absolutely pathetic. So please remember, there are no essay questions and you do not need to practice for the essay questions. Now coming to question number 1. This is section A, answer all questions, write your answer in the space provided. The diagram shows part of the human body involved in excretion. Name the liquid that passes out of the human body through tube D and the waste product it contains. Now first of all, let's get this right. Just a quick revision. What is A? Now what we have to understand is A, if this is the one going towards the kidney, A is the vessel going towards the kidney, so it has to be the renal artery, and then it's arising from the aorta. Just a revision, I'm doing that. So the renal artery is, this is the renal artery, A is the renal artery, and this is also the renal artery. And then B is the kidney, C is the bladder, and D is the urethra. This is, of course, the ureters. And I always tell you to remember it in this manner is that there are two E's in it. So this is the two ureters, two ureters. And this is urethra. There's only one E in it and there's one urethra, which carries the urine out of the body. So the liquid that passes out of the human body through tube D is the waste product it contains. So liquid is called urine, and the waste product is urea. Now describe how parts A, B, and C are involved in removing the waste product that passes out of tube D. Now this is part B of the question and this is for 3 marks. So you be very careful and talk about everything. So as I told you before, A is the renal artery. Let's go back to the diagram. So A is the renal artery and A brings the urea to the kidney. So A is the renal artery, brings the urea, or you can say the waste product, to the kidney. Then what does the kidney do? B. The kidney filters the blood to remove the urea. It isn't removing, don't say it removes it from the body, it removes it from the blood. The renal artery contains blood, oxygenated blood. It's arising from the aorta. So the kidney filters the blood to remove the urea. And then what does C do? The bladder is the urinary bladder. This is stores the urine, or you can say collects the urine or keeps the urine, because the urine keeps on collecting there and then you decide to go to the washroom, and then of course the bladder is emptied. So it collects or stores the urine till the person decides to go to the washroom and urinate. Now you can see how I have written this. Renal artery brings the urea to the kidney. But the important thing for you to remember is the kidney filters the blood. The word filters has been underlined, which means that is essential for you to get that mark. You have to use this word filters. So kidney filters the blood to remove the urea. If I've underlined it, it means that it's an important word that you must use in your answer. And then the bladder stores the urine. Urine has to be, you have to write urine. You can't say bladder stores the water or bladder stores the waste products, or you can say something else like bladder stores the excess water. So you can't say that. You have to say the bladder stores urine. The word urine has to be used. So this is what you have to understand is that when you learn from marking schemes is to use the correct biological English. If you don't use that, if you didn't use the word filter, you didn't get a mark. If you didn't use the word urine, you didn't get a mark. Now coming to question number 2, grapes are fruits that grow on a plant called a grapevine. A farmer grows a variety of grapevine called the sultana. The grapes produced are sold to be eaten fresh or used to make dried fruit called sultanas. A. 100 grams of fresh grape produced by the vine contains 15.5 grams of sugars. Sugars. Didn't say the name of the sugar. Sucrose is a sugar, fructose is a sugar, glucose is a sugar. Describe and explain how the plant produces sugars and transports sugars to the fruit. So basically it's a very, very detailed question because it is for 5 marks. So what are you going to talk about? You're going to first talk about photosynthesis, light absorbed by chlorophyll, water and carbon dioxide react or combine, and glucose and oxygen is formed. Then the glucose is converted to sucrose, and then this sucrose is transported in the phloem by the process of translocation or by active transport. And then, of course, if you mentioned something, water from the xylem, water and soil, water from the soil and xylem vessels, and the carbon dioxide from the air, well, you'd get a mark in the photosynthesis part. But you have to talk about the phloem as well. You can't be talking just about photosynthesis and not talking about the phloem, because it said how the plant produces sugar. So this is all going to be about photosynthesis. And the transport sugar is the story about the phloem. So you've got to give me photosynthesis and you've got to give me the phloem part. Now let's look at how we word this. So photosynthesis, 1 mark, light absorbed by chlorophyll, water and carbon dioxide combined. Now you can see if you had given me the equation for photosynthesis, you would have got 3 marks, because water and carbon dioxide gives you glucose and oxygen. You wrote that, 2 marks for that. And if you have on the arrow, you wrote light and chlorophyll. Well, you got a mark for that. So you could get all these marks. So photosynthesis, 1 mark, light absorbed by chlorophyll, 2nd mark, water and CO2 combine, glucose and oxygen formed, glucose converted to sucrose, water from the soil and carbon dioxide from the air. But out of all these, even if you wrote all of them, I was only allowed to give you 4 marks. And you had to give me any one of these points in the phloem by translocation. If you said it's transported by the process of translocation, you got a mark. Or if you said in the phloem by translocation, you'd still get only 1 mark. Maximum, I could give you 1 mark for this, because this is specified in the mark scheme that this was only 1 mark. The rest of the 4 marks should have been from this story, from the photosynthesis story. So we had to give you 4 marks from that point. So please understand how marking schemes are done and how you have to write very carefully when you are answering these questions. Now coming to the B part, the Sultana grape variety produces fruits without seeds. This is because of a gene mutation. Now part 1 says state the meaning of the term mutation, and this is for 2 marks. What is a mutation? Mutation is a change, but a change where? The change in the genetic material. So if you just wrote a change, well, you got a mark for that. And if you said in the genetic material, where is the change? In the genetic material. If you said that, well, you got a mark for that. But remember, this is, if you didn't remember genetic material and you wrote DNA or you wrote chromosome, well, that was correct as well. So either you said a change in the genetic material, or you said in the DNA, or you said in the chromosome, or you said in the nucleotides, or in the bases. Well, if you know all that, well, you're pretty clever then. So 1 mark for the change, and the 2nd mark is where is the change in the genetic material. So a student just writes the mutation is a change, and he doesn't know anything else, but he just knows it's a change. Well, he would get 1 mark. But if he then specifies that where would the change be, in the genetic material or in the chromosome or in the gene, because you remember chromosomes are not in plants, of course they are chromosomes, but if it was a bacteria, there are no chromosomes in a bacteria, it's in the DNA that the change takes place. So this is that part. Now part 2, all the sultana grape plants growing in the farmer's field are genetically identical. Explain why they are all genetically identical. Why are they genetically identical? Why? Because there are no seeds. It's all asexual reproduction, or you can say vegetative propagation. And in sexual reproduction, gametes are formed, and that produces a genetic variation. And that involves mitosis and does not, you see, or you could have said asexual reproduction, there's only mitosis and there's no meiosis. Meiosis only takes place in sexual reproduction. So why are they genetically identical? And look at the marks, 3 marks. You must give me 3 points. Remember, when you're answering this paper is you must think about the marks. If there are 3 marks, think of 3 points. So the first thing is that it does not have any seeds, and seeds are produced by meiosis and then pollination, fertilization, and all that. And because this is just asexual reproduction, or you can use the word vegetative propagation. When I put a slash here, it means either you said this or you said this. Please don't put slashes in your answer. Just I want you to understand that these were the words that were allowed in the mark schemes. And in asexual reproduction involves only mitosis. There is no meiosis. You have to use the word mitosis and meiosis. If it's underlined, it means you had to use these words. These are very typical biological terms, and you must use them so that we know that you understand these terms. And this means your understanding of biology is really profound, and you can answer in the correct biological English. That's only when you're going to get an A star. If you know these words and you know how to and when to write these. Now, coming to the C part of the question, the farmer sprays insecticide on the grains to improve the crop of. So, improve the crop of grapes. Explain how this has an impact on the biodiversity of his fields. Now, I usually look at the exam report which comes after this exam has been held, and it says most candidates appreciated that insecticides kill insects, therefore reducing biodiversity. However, some answers only went on to discuss how this would increase the yield of crops. But it's not even asking you how it is going to increase the yield of crops. So why are you writing about that? This is because the student just does not read the question carefully. Or maybe you don't understand the question, or maybe your English is not befittingly, appropriate for O-level standards. So the exam report says that many students only discussed how to increase the yield of crops. Of course, we know that insecticide means less insect, means less leaves eaten up, so less, so the leaf surface area will not be decreasing, so more photosynthesis, more crop yield. But of course, that was not what was asked. Better answers pointed out that other animals may be killed, either directly or due to the disturbance of food webs. And a common error was to suggest that plants were killed by the insecticide. And that is surprising that the students write the plant is going to be killed by the insecticide. Insecticide means it's going to kill the insects, like bactericide, fungicide. Anything side is which kills it. So bactericide kills bacteria, fungicide kills fungus. There are fungicidal creams and people develop fungus infection of their toes. So the farmer sprays insecticide on the grapevines to improve the crop of grapes. Now, this was actually to mislead some of the students. Explain how this has an impact on the biodiversity. So, we're going to talk about the biodiversity, not about the crop yield. So, you've got to be really answering in the correct manner. You've got to be very careful what you write. So, insects will be killed. Fine. 1 mark. Disrupts food chain. 2nd mark. Reduction in the number of non-insect organisms or other species. Then bioaccumulation of insecticide in the food chain. Bioaccumulation means that that chemical which goes into the soil is carried into the water, and here it increases in the food chain. Top predators will be killed. And if there are less insects, so there will be less pollination, because it has said how is this going to impact on the biodiversity? How is it going to impact the biodiversity? So if there are less insects means less pollinators. Less pollinators means what? There'll be less fruit or less flowers, whatever those crops are being grown for. So please be careful how you read the question and how you answer the question. So, I mean, how would you write it? Insects killed, 1 mark. Disrupts food chain, 2nd mark. Reduction in non-insect species. Why? Because the chemical goes into the soil. So maybe earthworms or snails are killed. They are not insects. Bioaccumulation of insecticide in the food chains. Top predators killed. Less pollination. Now, there were actually 6 mark scheme points, but you only had to give me 3 to get your 3 out of 3. So if you wrote 4 or 5 and one was wrong, but you'd still get your 3 marks. So you always write more so that you're sure that you get your 3 out of 3. Then coming to the D part of the question, the skins of the grapes are naturally covered in a white powdery coating. This is wild yeast, a fungus. List 2 similarities in structure between grape cells and yeast cells. Now, what are they asking? This is which chapter? This is microbiology. Grape cell is a plant cell. So they're asking you differences between plant cells and fungus cells. Now, if you didn't understand that, well, you're going to be making, and it said structure, not process. If you say plant cells photosynthesize and yeast cells do not photosynthesize, but that's not a structure, that's a process. And that's exactly what the exam report says. That many students started writing about the process. I said structure. If I say, okay, what is the difference between boy X and boy Y? How are they different? And you say he wears glasses and he doesn't wear glasses. Well, that's the appearance-wise you're talking about. But if you say he studies biology and he studies maths, well, then that's something else. You're talking about what subjects they take, but you're not talking about their appearance. And I said, only talk to me about their appearance. So list two similarities between structure, plant cell and fungus. So both of them have a nucleus. Both of them have cell membrane. Both of them have cell wall. Both of them have cytoplasm. But if you said one photosynthesizes and one does not photosynthesize, well, that means you didn't even read the question properly. So any two out of these, there are actually 4 points, but any two of these, yes, if you write in one line two wrong points, and the next line you write the two correct points, well, I'm not going to mark it. I'm going to just give you 0 because the first 2 points you've written are wrong. I'm going to just read the first 2 points because it says list two. So if you write something else, if you write plasmid, well, that's wrong. Plasmids are only in bacteria. Or if you said chlorophyll is present, well, chlorophyll is not present in both. And you wrote that and then you wrote two correct ones after that. Well, that would be, I'll give you a 0 for that. Why? Because you've written two wrong ones and then you've written two right ones. I'm going to read the first two, especially in a question when it says list two. I know there's no negative marking in bio, but if you negate yourself, if you write two correct things and then you write two wrong things, like for instance, the answer was xylem and you wrote xylem and you wrote phloem. So it's +1 for xylem and then -1 for phloem. Why? Because you weren't sure. So you wrote xylem and phloem. Then coming to part 2, suggest how the yeast is able to grow on the grape skins. The yeast is blown by the wind or the spores are transferred by, and they use the sugars from the grapes. So the spores or the yeast cells are blown by wind and transferred to the, so how do they grow on the grape skins? So they have to somehow come from somewhere. So you've got to understand that. Then coming to the last, third part, state two ways in which yeast can be used by humans. How can it be used by humans? You can't say fermentation. What do we get out of fermentation? We use it to make bread so that we can have bread and jam in the morning. Or it's used to make alcohol or wine. Or it is used in biofuel production. Or it is used as a probiotic or a yeast extract. Some people eat that as a probiotic. It helps in the normal health of the intestine. So it's a yeast supplement. So part two, spores blown by wind and use the sugars from the grapes. Then bread making, making alcohol or wine, biofuel production, and yeast extracts are used as probiotics or as supplements. Now coming to question number 3, guinea pigs are small mammals. In some countries they are produced for food and in others they are bred as pets. Guinea pigs can have either straight hair or curly hair. The allele for straight hair, big T, or capital T, is dominant to the allele for curly hair, and that is small t. So it means the animals with straight hair either have to be this or have to be this, because the dominant trait, so they can be either homozygous or they can be heterozygous. And this is of course called homozygous dominant, this is called heterozygous. Please remember, heterozygous is not dominant or recessive. Now the ones which have curly hair have to be homozygous recessive, because that's what they're telling us in the question, that is a small letter t. So small letter means the ones which have curly hair have to have this. Now when you've understood this question, then you can do the rest of the genetics question. Always remember that. Explain the difference between a gene and an allele, and this is 2 marks. So what is a gene? Gene is a section of DNA. What is an allele? Allele is a version of the gene. Like you have in rabbits, there is an allele for black fur, and there's an allele for white fur. Similarly, in human beings, the blood group, there are 3 alleles, IA, IB, and IO. So an alternative form of a gene. Just like I have 3 markers, so I have 3 alternative types of markers, 3 different colors of markers. So what is gene? Gene is a section of DNA. An allele is a version of the gene, or you can say an alternative form of the gene. So please be careful how you word this. A gene is a section of DNA, and allele is an alternative form. Allele, alternative form. It's very similar wordings, allele. Now coming to part 2, a breeder has 2 straight-haired guinea pigs, male and female, and is surprised when one of the offspring has curly hair. So what have you to have in the offspring? You have to remember is you have to have small t, small t. Now, how are you going to have that? If the parents have to be big T, small t, because one small t has to come from one parent and the other small t has to come from the other parent. So you couldn't have said this. How would they have a child small t, small t? So this had to be heterozygous. Only then you can have this. So that is very easy for you all to understand is that you start off with the genotype of the offsprings, and then of course you can figure this out. How you do a genetic diagram. This is genotype of the parents, then this is the gametes, you write it separately, then this is possible offspring genotypes and the possible offspring phenotypes. So if you can understand these points, you can please go back to my videos and understand this, how you have to go about these genetics questions. But basically what to understand is the answer tells you the genotypes of the parents, because this is how you're going to figure it out. And coming to the B part of the question, baby guinea pigs develop in the mother's uterus for between 1459 and 73 days. The mother usually gives birth to between 2 and 4 offsprings. The diagram shows the uterus and developing offspring. The offspring of both humans and guinea pigs develop in a uterus. Use the information provided and your knowledge of human development. Discuss the similarities and differences in the development of offsprings of humans and guinea pigs. Now, if you look at the similarities, well, you see here they've shown you this diagram. And you see the similarities. There's something, which is similar is that they have a placenta, they have an umbilical cord. You can see some sort of a umbilical cord here. You can see this umbilical cord going here. And then you can see this is the placenta here. So there is a placenta, there's an umbilical cord, so that provides the nutrition. Then there's an amniotic sac. You can see there is this sac. I'm just going to color it so that you understand which one is the amniotic. This is the amniotic sac which is inside, and so the amniotic sac is present, and then the offsprings are cushioned, or there is some sort of mechanical protection. So these are the similarities. Differences: shape of the uterus seems a little weird. I mean, the human uterus is something like this. Now this looks a little weird. So shape of the uterus is a little different. Duration of pregnancy is very different, which is called the gestation period. This is 59 to 73 days. In humans, it's 9 months and 10 days. So that is pretty long. Here it's only 59 to 73 days, so it's about 3.5 months. Yeah, 2.5 months. So it's 2.5 months. And so shape of the uterus is a little weird. Duration of the pregnancy is different. The number of offsprings is very, very high in guinea pigs. Humans just have one kid. It's very rare to have twins or triplets. So I mean, this is a normal thing for them to have 2 to 4. So the mother usually gives birth to between 2 and 4 offspring. Now that is not the case in humans. So that is one differences that you can talk about. So differences: shape of uterus, duration of pregnancy, number of offsprings, higher in guinea pigs. Question 4: amylases and enzymes that are made in specific cells of animals and plants and also by bacteria. In humans, amylase is secreted into the alimentary canal in saliva and in the pancreatic juice. Explain what is meant by the term enzyme. Very simple. Biological catalyst speeds up chemical reactions without being changed itself. Then number 2, outline how two structural features of enzyme molecules. They're made of proteins, they have an active site, they have a specific shape which is complementary to the substrate. So 2 marks, 3 mark scheme points, but you could have given me any two of these. Then it says name both the substrate and product of amylase. Of course, that is starch, and the product is maltose. But if you said sugar or if you said glucose, even that was correct, though I don't agree with that. But they did allow it. Cambridge did allow it. So I'm nobody to challenge Cambridge, so I do not agree with it. But then Cambridge says they're not going to go into any discussions on the mark schemes. So biological catalyst speeds up chemical reactions without being changed itself. That's 3 mark scheme points. Then two structural features: made of protein, has an active site, and the shape of the active site is complementary to the substrate. Then the substrate is starch, and that is maltose. Part B of the question is amylase produced by bacteria can be used as part of an industrial process that converts plants such as corn into biofuel. Biofuels can be used instead of diesel or petrol, which are fossil fuels. The bar chart shows how the activity of amylase is affected by temperature and pH. So we've got these different graphs, temperature at 0 degrees, 40, 50 degrees, 50, 60, and 70, and you've got all these bar charts. Now it says describe what the data in the bar chart shows about the activity of the enzyme and explain why this information is useful for the producer of biofuels. Now, whenever it's a describe, I've said that time and time again, there is no biology. You don't give me any bio. It's a describe, and there's 4 marks. But that would be describe. So describe is enzyme is active from pH 6 to pH 8. So the enzyme is active from pH 6 to pH 8. Enzyme pH is around about 7.5 because this is the highest that we have here. Enzyme is active between 30 and 70 degrees Celsius. What do you get from the graph? What does the graph tell you? What does the data tell you? This is a very important concept which some students will be able to do, others won't be able to do. So the enzyme is active between 30 and 70 degrees Celsius. Optimum temperature is around 60 degrees Celsius. Why? Optimum temperature is 60 degrees Celsius. It's this one which is the highest. So this is what you're getting from the graph. Now, how can this be used for the production of biofuels? So that means manufacturers can keep the optimum and the correct conditions and biofuel produced very efficiently, or you can say maximum yield will be obtained. So all this is from the data that you have seen. So from the graph, you can gauge all this. You can get from the graph. Please remember how this data analysis is done. You must do a few questions on this and then you'll be able to do this question easily. So you can see the enzyme is active from pH 6 to pH 8. Why? You can see all this activity in the graph. Optimum pH is 7.5. Why? Because you have the highest activity is at pH 5. This is the one which you are seeing here. Then enzyme active between 30 and 70 degrees Celsius because you have all these data from these different temperatures as well. Optimum temperature is 60. Why is it 60? Because you can see this one here. Now this one here, let's give it another color. So you can see this one here is this one. So this is how you're going to be able to gauge this. Manufacturers can, and how is it going to help the production of biofuels is manufacturers can keep optimum conditions. They will then use the optimum temperature and the optimum pH, and the biofuel produced will be very cost effective. You see, this English is very important, cost effective, or you can say efficiently, or you can say maximum yield. Now, these wordings are very important, and you must remember these wordings so that you are easy to be able to write them very easily in the exam. The last part of the question is biofuels can be burnt in vehicle engines, suggest how biofuels can result in pollution and cause environmental change. Now, combustion releases carbon dioxide. You could have said that. Greenhouse gases, these are greenhouse gases, they contribute to global warming, and this is going to result in a climate change. What is going to be the effect of it? Melting of glaciers or the rising of oceans or drought? And then you can talk about impact of the climate change. What will that be? There'll be loss of habitat, there'll be redistribution of species, loss of agricultural land. So all these can be points, but you only have to give me 2 out of these to get your 2 out of 2 on this part of the question. Carnivorous mammals that hunt their prey. The forelimb of a lion has the same basic structure of the arm of a human. The diagram shows the bones in the forelimb of a lion. State the name of the bone X, humerus, the muscle between X and Y, biceps muscles. Lions can only run quickly for a short time. This means they have got close to the prey before accelerating to a maximum running speed. Name the process used to release energy. Respiration. So name the process to release energy is respiration. Explain why the lion can only run at maximum speed for a short time because respiring without oxygen, that means anaerobic respiration will take place. Lactic acid will be produced. This will collect in the muscles, accumulation in the muscles, and this can only be broken down once oxygen is available. So when the stops exercising, you take in deep breaths and that oxygen debt is relieved. So this ends this paper, and thank you very much for watching, and thank you for subscribing. Please leave your comments for any things that you want me to do and make some new videos on it just before your exams.